on all the housing
land. It comes to the council to say we want to build homes on this, and so that we have a really clear sense of how much that land needs to be purposed towards those starter homes. The other thing I think we might want to put on our radar, I've been in conversation with Councilor Lopez with the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. I'm good, I'm glad I got that right. And they're in the investigation of tiny homes. So where people can't necessarily afford to get into a home, but there are other, I know Reedy, if I get her last name correct, with the CDC, is very partnering with my that can be used for these starter homes. And she's ready to go. The builders.
I'd also point out, though, the 80-unit multifamily project on Riddle Road, the multifamily category and affordable housing. So I don't disagree. I agree with and a facilitator in the development of those. There's a lot of pieces and parts to securing land, buying lands, and making that happen. But certainly looking forward to working on those issues together.
If I may ask, is the 80 family unit, are those units that can be purchased by families, or those rentals?
Rentals. Mm-hmm.
And it's great to have rentals available, but I think we also really need to be focused on helping people get a foot into their own financial stability with starter homes.
Right. And I get also point out that what the purposes of why we're doing the code assistance update, because our code has a number of barriers to what we call that middle housing type that will facilitate
This conference will now be recorded.
Being able to help developers, incentivize them to build those things. What are the solutions other communities have used?
Yeah, something look at and evaluate a little bit more detail in that on housing production strategy, but some of the tactics that communities have used is, sounds good. Thanks. Oh, actually, I'm going
Yes, now you
You
can
ready?
stay, because speaking of dropping barriers to development, we have an item, and that is our legislative amendment 21-01, considering the first reading, but also we talked about if this to conduct a reading and emergency at this time. Pardon me?
And that requires,
So I know there were some concerns about that, so I'm kind of interested in perhaps do
then we'll bring back second reading like we would traditionally at your next meeting, and then it becomes effective 30 days after that second reading is approved.
I'm trying to remember, is the intent of modifying this, one of the intents to make it so that we can have a little bit more density? Is that-
Yeah, I think having smaller setbacks can facilitate more efficient, more dense use of land. That's certainly one of the objectives. It also flexibility on the house plans and the design, the layout of the lot. One of the reasons we heard for this amendment coming forward was that there was a need for more single-story homes, and it's easier to develop those when you have that 5-foot on each side. So, this change will be consistent. We'll still comply and exceed the setback requirements that the building codes enact for fire and life safety. So there's not an issue there. So yeah, it does a little more efficient use of that land. Mhm.
Yes, Councilor Lopez and Councilor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for all the staff work that's gone into this. In the interest of framing the conversation, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 1399, an ordinance adopting amendments to chapter 18.50 of the Monmouth Zoning Code and Development Ordinance relating to low-density residential RS zone yard setback requirements. Legislative Amendment 21-0 and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this is first reading
Right,
first.
yes.
So I think it's a question of which version does the council want to adopt? There's one that if they approve it unanimously can be acted on first reading, which is just first reading, and then moved to approval.
Okay.
So we don't need a motion quite yet. I think we need to know, though, maybe for discussion, which version. Really, the question is there anyone in opposition?
Right.
Because if there is, then the answer is clear. We just do first reading tonight, and then we bring it back to you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah.
Thank
I would with the interest of things to occur as due process.
And again,
Question.
an emergency clause tonight. We do first reading and we move ahead to the next meeting.
I will take that temperature for that. So please indicate at this time if there is anyone who would prefer that we move forward on a first reading tonight and be able to bring this back and which would cause us to at least until our next meeting, other than declaring the emergency process tonight. So if anyone is all in one motion, all in one reading.
More homes into an annex. And I think the public needs to have another opportunity to weigh in on shrinking that yard size. And I'm assuming that's what a second reading would allow.
No,
No.
there won't be another hearing on it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
already been.
The public hearing was the opportunity for public hearing, two of those, one at the commission level, one at the council level. That's really the opportunity for them to speak to the concept that is going forward in the legislative amendment. Typically people are always welcome to make a public comment, but we don't open a hearing. We don't add testimony to the record at this point.
Right. I meant public comment. I'm sorry. Public comment. I think they should be able to come in and make public comment
So,
that they don't want a 5-foot yard space. So,
and we didn't have anyone at the public hearing. We haven't had any written comments, and we don't have tonight to make comment. So
how do we, excuse me, I'm sorry. How do we get the word out to let people know that this is coming up to change this yard size?
Suzanne can answer,
Yeah.
certainly, because she has to do a lot of legal notices for one thing.
Yeah, so for a legislative amendment to our code, we're required to give notice in a local newspaper. And so we provide that notice to the Polk IO of the two public. So we've had 2 public hearing dates. And then if we have folks that request direct, then we also send it to what we call those interested parties as well. So notice has been provided in the IO, and there were a couple, so Larry Dalton that requested the amendment was on the interested party notice application. He's forwarded it on to some of those that he works with on that. So that's what our code requires for the legislative amendment process.
Do we, for this kind of thing, is it appropriate to put it into the city newsletter that comes out with utility bills?
We
Because
haven't.
this is going to, I'm sorry, this is going to be impacting how people will have their yards in the future. And the comment last that people can make the decision to buy or not buy. But if we're going to push houses in closer, then that's going to what people are going to be able to choose to buy.
Councilor McKeel, if you are not, I don't know what the decision will do to amplify that, right? If you would like, we can we'll do the first reading tonight, and you can assist in getting the word out so that people didn't have an opportunity to provide public comment, then we need to get that out. I mean, it's in our agenda.
Anyways, my bullet points. So really, I just want to start with really our staffing and where we're at. And as you kind of look through this table that I put together here, you'll see that obviously currently I'm filling the interim chief of police role, and I'm filling the interim lieutenant. We have 3 sergeants. Have those sergeants at the end of next month. And currently, due to staffing, what I would just point out is that really our patrol sergeants usually are a supervisory role, calls to lateral duties. Currently, just because are kind of short where we're at, they are being used for patrol coverage. As we move down there, you'll see a name on there, Patrol Sergeant Jeff Hodney. And I'll just use this time to say that Jeff Hodney was recently promoted on the 15th of July, and we are happy to have him in that position. But he too will be still covering patrol during this time. So, but he will take Sergeant Kim Doran's spot here officially next month. So, our 2 detectives currently are helping also with patrol coverage. And getting down to the officers, we do have one officer currently on paternity leave. They just won the birth of their daughter. Was a pretty awesome thing for them. And we have another officer that is actually about to go on paternity leave here. So we have light duty due to injury. And we also have another officer that is moving out of state and looking to retire. So right now that there's a lot of moving parts. You can see that we don't have a super large department. And I will just point out really quickly, Harrison has make sure that we have adequate coverage and where we need it. So he's done a great job, and I will just publicly acknowledge really the department with all the changes happening and where we're at. They've done an amazing job still what's needed, and have done. We've completed our annual requirements. We've done our ethics training. Had several people go through leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion courses. I've spoke about those. Resource allocation and deployment training, legislative updates. EVOC, which is our emergency vehicle operations active threat response. We've sent several officers to be instructors for force-on-force instructor and tactical de-escalation. We have done most of our use of force training for this year. So I have a whole bunch of other things that we have done, and I will save some time and not go through every single one of those. But every year there is an annual requirement from DPSST that says we have to get 8 hours of use of force and 1 hour of ethics, and that is the minimum requirements. And then every officer, when they're hired, is put on a 3-year loop, and that loop really says that you have to have additionally to that annual those 3 years, and they can be in various disciplines, and then has to have their CPR at all times. And furthermore, everyone on supervisory staff, sergeants, lieutenant, and myself have to have an additional 24 hours of leadership training that they have over those 3 years. So we have always far exceeded those qualifications, and we are still doing that. So that's kind of a screenshot on where we're at currently. Still yet to come this year. We have some officers going to be range instructors. They're called TCCC courses, which get events where there's injuries it's the first aid for those. So we have one going to a basic course and one that's going to an advanced course that is, he has some time, so he is in that advanced area. We have some investigators going to
So, but from like understanding and I've been different, engaging with the community, how we're reaching out, how we're working stopped in their cars. On and looking at implementing that and then coming up with a strategy for implementation.
And trained, he continued, and he attended the Basic Police Academy shortly thereafter. He just recently completed his field training evaluation and his press this month. So this is Darian Hanfield. Now I'll talk a little bit about Ken Wiggum. Ken was born and raised in Newcastle upon Tyne, Northern England. Following completion of high school, he started his apprenticeship as an electrician. He worked in this field for 6 years doing commercial, industrial, and residential electric work. Ken later switched gears and began work in social services for a private sector company, initially working with kids who were in the youth. We'll just introduce his beautiful wife back here,
Yep.
Beth, and their 2 kids. And this is my first time meeting them, so.
Hi.
Now I want to speak briefly just about the swearing-in ceremony. This brief ceremony may seem like a formality to some, but to Darian and Ken, this is a very significant event in their law enforcement career. Taking the oath is important and necessary in order to exercise authority as a police officer in the state of Oregon. That is the obvious reason for this ceremony, but there is more to taking the oath than just repeating words spoken out loud. For these officers tonight, in front of a public audience, they're affirming the fact that they understand the position of authority they are now in. Both Darian and Ken are affirming that they understand what it means to be a public servant and the sacrifices they will be making throughout their career to protect the residents of Monmouth. They understand that those they serve trust them to always be honest, ethical, fair, and persons of the highest integrity. Darian and Ken know they will always be held accountable for their actions and therefore will strive to keep the public's trust by always doing the right thing. This is the reason why the oath is spoken aloud and in front of a public audience such as tonight. Tonight, Darian and Ken are both making their promise to each of you to expect nothing but from the very best from them as they take on the necessary and critical role in our society. Throughout their career, both officers will be challenged. They will face adversity. They will see the good in some people, and they will see the absolute worst in others. They will help people who will be forever grateful, and they may be criticized for some who may not fully understand the actions they will have to take in order to keep themselves and their community safe. Both will be placed in harm's way at times, and they will be expected to react within seconds in certain circumstances and make the right decision every time. Some people will recognize them as heroes for what they do, while others will second guess their actions and never be satisfied for the work they perform. Darian and Ken, you both have answered a calling to serve others no matter what the circumstances. As many in our society will run away from danger, you will do the opposite. You are both of the chosen few who will run towards danger to protect people you've never met. Being a police officer is truly a calling, and I guarantee you will both experience all that I've just mentioned if you remain in law enforcement for long enough. It's not a job for the weak, but rather for those of strong mind and body. Before administering the oath, here's the most important thing that I want you to remember, and don't forget this: that you will work for each and every member of this community. Just like it states in the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, as police officer, your fundamental duty is to serve mankind. And that means help everyone, no matter who they are, and for whatever reason they need help. You are the person that will be there to help those who cannot help themselves. So for these reasons, which I believe are the right reasons, I am proud at this time to administer the oath and welcome Officer Darian Hanfield and Ken Wiggum. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ken Wiggum,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Monmouth,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Monmouth,
and I will well and faithfully
and I will well and faithfully
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police officer
for the city of Monmouth
for the city of Monmouth
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you.
Congratulations. guys.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Welcome.
Well,
So great. So great.
Chief, you had another member of your department show up. Do you want to introduce him while he's here as
Sergeant
well?
Hodney back here, and this is Sergeant Hodney, who maybe many of you have not met him yet. He's been with us for, I think, 3.5 years. And Jeff he has a different background too. He was actually an engineer before his time with us, and built a different calling. He's been with us and done a great job. He went through our promotional process, came out on top, and we're really glad to have him in that role. So this is Jeff Hodney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we get to talk about cable franchise agreements because
How do you
That's-
follow that?
Yeah.
so inspiring.
Impossible to follow that.
Thanks Wiggum's family for coming.
Great. Thanks.
Thank
Mayor.
you, City Manager Marty White.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to begin a discussion and ask for your consideration for the renewal of the franchise with Spectrum Charter Communications. So generally, cities grant a franchise and it sets the terms and conditions for the company to operate and provide services within the city. Much of cable TV operation is also guided by the Federal Communications Commission. So our interaction with Charter Spectrum Cable TV is fairly limited to their presence in our city. They provide cable services to their subscribers. Their cable is lashed to our poles, and they also pay franchise fees as a franchised utility here in Monmouth. With this proposed franchise, renewing the agreement drops us very quickly into the finer details of whether and how Charter Communications would support what is called our public educational and governmental channel, our public TV channel. Or whether they would pass through a fee, also called a PEG fee, that would support our PEG channel, which is operated by WIMPEG, Western Independence Monmouth PEG TV channel. The PEG issue has been the one that has prevented us getting a franchise in place with Charter since it expired back in 2018. So in short, Monmouth has continued to insist that the channel be carried and that a PEG fee be passed through to subscribers on par with other providers such as MyNet. And Charter has refused to do so, citing regulatory and cost and other alternatives to providing PEG programming, that those are available in other ways. So because it's possible to transmit the PEG channel on the internet without requiring cable operators to carry our channel or require a contribution from the cable company, the draft franchise that I'm asking you to consider tonight is silent on requiring a PEG fee and gives a process in the future, should we request it, to ask Charter to carry the PEG channel. So as I said, I quickly dropped us into a very, very small part of what the franchise is really all about. Broadly, what the franchise is meant to do is allow Charter to operate in our city. But the issue that would get us to a place where we have an effective franchise with them really is about resolving that issue. So because it is possible for our WIMPEG channel to be with a small investment of our own PEG funds, we would be able to stream our own content on the channel and not require in the future that cable operators either pay a fee or carry our channel as much as we would like them to. I'm bringing you a franchise that's pretty much silent on those issues because as we go forward in the future, the likelihood of being able to collect very much or ask very much of the cable operators to carry our content is probably not going to be successful. So anyway, I'll leave it at that because I gave you some background about this with the staff report in some much greater detail. I've worked with Charter Communications and their representative to reach an agreement that I said I would bring to the council so that we could discuss the terms of it. It's a franchise that's that spans 10 years, and as I mentioned, the PEG fee issue is not included in the the agreement. But if we were to want in the future to ask providers to carry our channel, we could do that through a process that is outlined in the franchise. I'm not sure I have a whole lot else to say because I'd like to hear if you have any discussion or questions. So with that, you have a first reading of an ordinance to consider the franchise should you decide to move it forward in its current form.
Counselor Oberst has thoughts about this.
So I've been in the middle of Winnipeg and to some extent on the edges of this. I believe this is the current agreement has been expired for 10 years or more now.
Not that long, but
Okay, but a while.
Yeah.
We had a 15-cent peg fee, as Marty points out in the our staff report, that in 2014 we managed to get raised to $1. When Winnipeg was first set up, Charter actually bought the piece of equipment necessary to send the signal over to Dallas to be sent back this way. That piece of equipment went down and they declined to replace it. So we haven't been sending a Winnipeg signal through Spectrum Charter for several years now. And the final point I would make is the way telecom's changing, this 10-year agreement could very well outlive cable television. Everybody's switching to streaming. Even our Winnipeg package is now effectively a streaming package. It comes in through your Wi-Fi instead of through a cable. And as far as I'm concerned, we could dig our heels in and hold our breath till we turn blue, and Charter still won't agree to carry a peg channel. And I would favor just going ahead and getting this done, because as I say, I'd rather have a franchise agreement in place and go forward with this than worry about something that is effectively become a moot point because of streaming and everything else. Just like to, as somebody who was in the middle of this for way too long, say I think we're there.
Thank you. Counselor Lopez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the work that you've done, Ms. Wine. Within the staff report, I didn't see, and perhaps I was missing it, what other communities, preferably in our area, are doing with this. I mean, this is changing technology and the changing and shifting realities of our lives. And, while I don't think that we need to exactly follow the lead of others, but learning from their experience, I believe is helpful. There's part of me that, gosh, I feel a little pushed around by this. I think there's a history of pushing around by this, which, I don't take kindly, but I'm happy to put that aside with the interest of the greater good. So, do you have any insight into what other communities have done with regard to their peg channels and peg fees?
I can relate. The City of Independence does have a franchise with Charter, although because Monmouth is the fiscal agent for Winnipeg, their agreement is also silent on the question of a fee or carrying the channel. I didn't do extensive research into other surrounding communities, but I can speak to my own experience in other communities, not nearby necessarily, and that I'm going to speak very plainly here. This is a fight that most communities lose in terms, and they're facing declining fee revenue and or never the opportunity to achieve getting PEG programming on their local channels. So, and maybe Mr. Shetterly has something to add.
Yeah, Chris, I don't have any specific community information for you, but a little background. Several years ago, a consortium of smaller communities banded together to negotiate a new charter agreement form with a franchise agreement form with Charter, with the idea being that small communities do get kind of kicked around by big Charter. And so by bringing a consortium together, there would be some strength in numbers in these communities. Hired one of the municipal law firms in the Portland area to negotiate for this consortium. We were part of that consortium. My recollection is that pretty much every other city in that consortium went ahead with basically this form of franchise agreement in substantial form, probably several years ago now, without the PEG fee provision. And really it was Monmouth that was kind of a holdout, trying to retain it. And so I think of that consortium, we're probably the last city to get to the point of adopting the franchise agreement now, just because Monmouth has held out for so long on that PEG fee, where other cities have just let it go.
And or not had a PEG, not had a
Well,
PEG
right, sure, yeah,
organization, right?
right.
We're kind of rare
Yeah.
in that. So Councilor
Now,
Oliveros. Councilor
I do have a
Lopez?
follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
So the PEG and the, you know, the term PEG, we continually use it. You know, it stands for Public Educational and Government Access. It sounds like a lot of that's underutilized by us anyway. We do have the PEG channel, and it seems like it's working well online. Would Minnet residents receive a reduction in their bills? I understand that this is a pass-through fee, so if we, you know, say, well, don't worry about it, would they actually receive a reduction in their bills, or this is just something that's not being collected anyway?
So we do have a disparity right now today between what's happening with Charter and what's happening with Minnet. So Minnet agreed when the PEG fee was to be passed through, that $1 per household per month would be passed through to all subscribers. And as was noted by Councilor Oberst, at the point when when Minnet's platform was primarily online and not on cable, the number of subscribers paying that PEG fee and the amount of revenue dropped a great deal. But we have Minnet subscribers to thank for our WIMPEG fund balance for capital investments. So to your question, our Minnet franchise is also expired. And at the point when we begin the renewal process with Minnet, we would be looking probably to WIMPEG to ask I'll just say, put the investments in place to be able to stream the PEG content. And at that point, neither cable operator would need to pay that fee in theory. If we wanted to rescind it or not have it be part of the renewed agreement, then yes, in the end, if you were a Minnet subscriber and the PEG fee was eliminated, you would be seeing $1 a month in reduction in your bill. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but I had to get there.
And so right now, if you're a Charter subscriber and we do this right now, you'll see a reduction in your bill as well, correct?
No,
because they're not paying it.
Charter has refused to pass through the PEG fee and actually has never had it part of their franchise.
Right.
So Charter subscribers have not paid a PEG fee since it was 15 cents.
Well, it feels like we already lost this one.
Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Mayor Coons. And mine is kind of in the same line as what Councilor Lopez and Ms. Wine were talking about. It's really that equity issue. And, you know, if Charter isn't going to be expected to pay the PEG fee, then Minnet should not be expected to pay the PEG fee. I do want to point out that it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Minnet agreed to pay for it. And they are a huge part of our community. And so that does show that their commitment to our community and to the PEG channel. But again, to be equitable, I would expect that the same would be offered to Minnet as being offered to Charter.
Councilor McKeel, then Councilor Carey.
So there's a passage in your wrong computer, wrong mouse. In the second paragraph under the franchise agreement status, that Charter refused to make capital investments to allow transmission of the PEG channel on its system estimated then at a cost of $170,000. And so I'm assuming then, with this conversation about MyNet, that MyNet has agreed to take on this cost of $170,000 to have a channel on their part. Is that correct?
It's not exactly, it doesn't exactly look like that. The head end for Charter's transmission system is in Dallas. And so the distance to be able to transmit the signal required a greater capital investment than for MyNet. But you're correct that MyNet agreed to carry our channel and to connect to their system. At the time, there were more cable subscribers.
But it wasn't a $170,000 proposition. Councilor Obers can tell you a little bit more detail about that because that was all his thing.
This will be really quick. I'll just say that there was already a fiber from MyNet to the university. The university serves as WIMPEG's head end. So it was automatically connected with hardly any additional equipment required. And it is not MyNet paying the fee. MyNet collects $1 from every subscriber and passes it through to WIMPEG. So it has been at no expense other than bookkeeping to MyNet all along. It would have been at no expense to Charter other than bookkeeping. Both systems had to reserve a channel, and that was what Charter refused to do, was make space on their package for this channel and provide the $170,000 to make the connection over to Dallas. When the original equipment died, the new equipment was $170,000. They wouldn't pay it. That's
so there's no cost to MyNet that. Okay, so it's not like we're providing Charter with a subsidy by saying essentially, no, don't worry about it. So my other question is, what happens if we don't have an agreement with Charter?
Well, the same thing that's been happening since 2018 when the agreement expires, which is the provisions of that agreement are, remain in place. And we have, in some cases, well, it's become quite out of date. So. And we have less enforcement authority for things that are.
There are good reasons to update and adopt a new franchise agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Carey?
My thoughts are along similar lines of what have been expressed. And frankly, if they don't want to provide the channel, which sounds like was initially, the space on their offerings for a PEG channel, that's fine. I'm not convinced that there's a lot of traffic on those anyway. But to have, I don't see the utility in allowing, a Charter to say, well, we're not going to pay it, and so we're going to say, well, that's okay. You've been a bad boy. And we're going to let you off the hook here, and at the same time keep MyNet on the hook. My suggestion would be is that as we're doing, we there may be a threshold if they get a much larger subscribership where we could demand that they provide a channel access, which is in the agreement as I read it. But if they don't want to do that, that's okay. But in the meantime, they ought to be collecting from their subscribers the same kind of fee that supports the same kind of programming. Now, they're not delivering it, but that's their choice. And and then if we dump the whole thing in the end, then we do both of them at the same time. I'm just not comfortable with, in effect, rewarding them. While MyNet has been a good citizen. I could be convinced otherwise, of course, but that's my sense, and it sounds like it's similar to others.
I'm going to go ahead and conduct the first reading. We have another opportunity to discuss this at our next meeting, so folks can talk through, think through, before we vote, but this is just our first reading. So if that's okay, I'm going to conduct first reading of ordinance number 1400 relating to cable system services in the city of Monmouth and granting to Spectrum Pacific West LLC, doing business as Charter Communications, a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain cable system within the city, creating new provisions and repealing ordinances 1184, the existing franchise dated February 4th, 2003, ordinance 1175, and ordinance 1184, and all prior conflicting ordinances. So we'll have more discussion next time. If you have additional questions between now and then, please send those to Marty, maybe, and copy Lane, and he can help you work through some of the other provisions of that contract you might have questions about. So, okay.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our last item on the business agenda before our reports and council comments, and that is information about ARPA funding, the federal coronavirus response that goes directly to cities. So,
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Truly, this was an effort tonight to just give you a status report about what we are thinking about and what we know about what Monmouth will receive under the American Rescue Plan Act. There's an estimate by U.S. Treasury that over the next 2 years, Monmouth will receive $2.35 million from, we're calling it ARPA, right? The American Rescue Plan Act. The intent of the funding is to help state and local governments to respond to the pandemic. And there are four, the eligible funding uses fall into four categories, including responding to the public health emergency and its negative economic impacts, and then also, and to business and nonprofit impacts. And then also to respond to workers who are performing essential work, providing government services in the face of revenue reductions, and making necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So at the moment, what I wanted you to do, and the purpose of the staff report, was to give you the evolving list of the ideas that we have about ways we might possibly use this funding. And obviously, we're going to try to be as deliberate and thoughtful about what that will look like. And the purpose of the report was to just give you a sense of what we've brainstormed so far about either ways that we believe that we've seen harm in the community that needs to be repaired, or we know that the infrastructure investments are going to be so way with the funding that would come in to make investments that we might not have fully assembled funding for. And we're looking for ways to partner and leverage that funding so that if, for example, a federal infrastructure package or a regional project for water source and supply, which has been asked for, would come forward, that we might be able to use the funding in those ways. I won't spend a bunch of time recounting what's in the staff report, but mostly in case you were wondering what we're thinking about. And I would say too, the thing we're wondering about right at the moment is, when will that money be received? So we've been waiting even just for the door to open for us to be able to apply for the funding, which is supposed to be happening this week because we're not an entitlement city. So anyway, so far we're trying to find ways to use the funding that would keep it within its purpose, and we're not in a hurry. We have, even as the funding comes in over 2 years and can be used probably most responsibly for one-time uses, we have until the year 2024 to fully utilize the funding. So really the point of I wanted you to know our beginning discussions about how that funding might be used. And I would welcome your thoughts and questions or curiosities about it.
And this isn't our first round of funding. We have received some prior funding, which we were able to use to reimburse ourselves, for example,
yes.
for emergency
Coronavirus relief pack. Yes,
right.
The coronavirus relief fund that came in. We have been, yes, we've been seeking reimbursement. Our finance director, Janet Chenard, has done yeoman's work in making sure that many of our pandemic related, both costs and also ways that we were helping the community were, used and are getting reimbursed in that way.
And we've received additional funding for businesses, and they've received, we've been, Suzanne has done a report for us about a lot of that work that already has been done. So This is a great opportunity to leverage these funds to do more of that work or find some different things that really can set us up for the future, I think. So Councilor Carey?
I thought it was a very interesting and comprehensive list of things that was provided in the staff report. So thanks for that. And I think we all look forward to more detailed conversation. But a couple of things that stuck out to me besides some of the obvious ones. I'm wondering if we couldn't leverage some of this money into our City Hall project, particularly around security, physical security that I think I've sort of expressed some issues about our protecting our upstairs employees and so forth, as well as our, interface at the ground floor level. Also cyber, that seems to be the thing coming, right? I mean, every time we turn around, somebody's going to be holding up Monmouth because we are one cherry in the hackers world, man. They'd love to be able to nail us if they could. So if we could do something along that line, it'd be wonderful. And then I wonder about some sort of photovoltaic options for our City Hall. Whether that could be incorporated. I'm not sure it's part of the design, but with some additional dollars, I'm just simply asking. And then it was noted charging stations for electric EVs, if electric vehicles are coming, so we get out in front of that if we can. Now, whether that meets all of the things, Marty, that you just ran through, any of those, I'm not sure, but it might be that we could have them add those into our basket of considerations. Just thoughts.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep, anything to do with future resiliency is included. So Councilor McKeel.
Sorry, I have two computers open. I'm trying to figure out which mouse to touch. So thank you, Ms. Wine, for this list. It some really good planning. I can see that the city department's already doing. I'm just looking at it though. I want to, can we keep a focus on the intention of the funding itself? And I know that they gave really wide parameters, and thank you, federal government, for that. But when it says the intent of the funding is to assist state and local governments in responding to the pandemic and mitigate its negative economic impacts. And then the A is to respond to public health emergencies or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, not-for-profits. And what I see in here are really things that we need to be paying for and purchasing. However, I don't see a lot of focus on what the needs of the Monmouth people need and the small businesses need. So during that horrible heat, for example, during that really horrible heat, 114 degrees, I went out and bought a pizza because I wasn't going to turn on my oven. So I stopped at the pizza place and talked to the young person who took my order at the counter, and I said, oh, it's the first time I've gone into a pizza place and it was cheap. It was cooler than the outside. And she looked at me actually with a bit of pain on her face and said, not by the ovens. And then I said, oh, well, I hope then tonight you can go home and cool off. And she said, my air conditioner is broken. So there's real needs of people in Monmouth that we need to be, I think, focused on. I got an email from Brent DeMoe and about the number of people who use the cooling stations. And he sent a report to the county and said that 46 people utilized the cooling centers in Polk County. 27 of those people were in Monmouth Independence area. So we have somebody who works in an oven all day, not in an oven, outside an oven. She is really toasty brown by the end of the day and doesn't have, her air conditioner is broken. And I'm assuming it's because you're working in a low income low-paying pizza place. So I would really like to see, I'm sorry, I'm just babbling along, but it'd be really great to see how we can step in for people in Monmouth and help them, particularly with the, the climate change problems that they're going to experience with no air conditioning, et cetera. So, and thank you actually for including on this list. I do see the support for the opening up the Community Resource Center again. So really thank you for that. That's great.
Yep, lots of great ideas here. So again, not any particular hurry, not a request at this time to prioritize. We will, I think, hopefully find a way to create a reporting dashboard or something for transparency to our community. That's a huge effort, I think, on the part of all entities that are receiving these federal funds, is make sure we're really clear to our communities about how to use them. And as you can see, some of them are collaborative with other organizations. You mentioned the Community Development Corporation, CDC, but also Polk County. Polk County has approached each of the jurisdictions in Polk County to talk about water planning, long-range water access planning. And so probably some other ideas that we'll come up with partners, and we'll keep information going. But yeah, this is great.
Thank you.
All right. Our reports this evening, and mine will be brief. Actually, the one activity I've had since our last meeting was a meeting, our all hands meeting here in town with folks from the City of Independence, the university, the school district, the fire department, and other regional partners. And this particular last week, we had a representative of Pacific Power, and we had called that person in to talk about what we're hearing as far as the potential impacts of wildfire is the current concern, of course. But, we've heard stories now that there may be preemptive power grid shutdowns. And some of those, even if the wildfire is not in a local community, but they might be upstream from something. So we had Diana Knoss from Pacific Power, and obviously Pacific Power doesn't serve Monmouth, but we have representatives there from Independence and Dallas. But really the issue is huge. As we know, Bonneville Power Administration can choose to shut down its transmission lines, and that would obviously affect us. So very interesting information. Many representatives from Pacific Power are there talking through what that looks like and the kind of notices that they give. And that's really all we can do. We can't tell them not to shut off power to avoid either causing or exacerbating things like wildfires during certain weather events. But it was very interesting to hear sort of how their notification plans go and the fact that they are in constant communication. And Marty, I don't know if you got anything else from that, or sort of how we bring that into our community discussion.
I don't have anything specific except to say that the same ideas and questions that we discussed with the person from Pacific Power, we're having the discussion at Monmouth Power and Light related to how we get our power from Bonneville Power Administration. And I think the message there is we're going to try to put together community messaging to let folks know that if your power goes out in the summer, it's not because maybe something's happening right in town. It might be because it's something happening, elsewhere with the wildfires. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to communicate about that now.
Yeah, it was really interesting work. And John.
Just quickly, and as you're talking about the interruption of power, just read a Bill Gates book about how to avoid a climate disaster. And one of the things he talks about was the need for large scale storage, electrical storage, and, big batteries in a sense that could help on the smaller level. And so that might be something that we could, I don't know, that there may have been some discussion about that, cease and that, but just to get that into the lexicon and the things that we're thinking about, that might be something that Monmouth Power and Light could begin to look at along those very lines.
Yeah, Councillor McKeel?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to bring up under councillor comments, a question about our strategies for looking at cooling centers, being that this is probably not the last time we'll see triple digit heats up like 114. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure not. In which case, do we need to be looking more strategically then with this threat that power could be shut off, having cooling centers with generators for our vulnerable population? So, I think I could probably last in the heat, but I know that there are people that would get very sick if they didn't have their air conditioner. So can the city really kind of look at what we can do in cooperation, obviously with the Polk County and Independence, but.
Yep,
The short answer to that is yes, we can look at
yes,
it.
and yes, we will add that to the list. Obviously, a resiliency issue, but there are a couple of other options coming together. I know the county's talking with other partners, and everyone is highly aware that we need to be more prepared for that next time in the future. So that
and I'm sorry, along with that though would be the reverse in the winter. With the loss of power and so heat. So I didn't mean that we only, I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I think we all got that this year too. Between ice storms and, we do have one board and commission appointment this evening. I hope you read the application from Colin Hulling. Colin is a Western Oregon University student and is interested in serving on the University Connections Community Connections group, which is part of our Monmouth Engaged commissions, and thought that it would be interesting to have a college student perspective on that, which we all agree with. And Phyllis, he lists an address of Sheridan, permanent address, and we do have an opening for an out-of-town person on that commission, so we can appoint Colin Hulling, and I would entertain a motion for that appointment.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst.
Second.
And a second from Councillor Bell. Sorry, Rebecca. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great. Thank you very much. We will let him know that he can join us and look forward to that perspective. And with that, I will ask if there are other reports from boards and commissions, and Councillor Salinas Oliveros has something for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Coons. The Historic Commission, we met on July 7th, and it was actually a very exciting meeting. We talked about our mural project, the mural project, and the commission reviewed a proposal from Eileen Hinkle, and we agreed to move forward with Ms. Hinkle's proposal. She had a really good idea, really good perspective of our historical background and cultural themes in our city. So we're really excited about that perspective. And the next step is to check with property owner and business owners to make sure that they're supportive of the design and be willing to contribute to the project costs. Staff will also approach council and the URA for their approval and to see if urban renewal funds can be used for the project. The AARP grant was not approved, so other suggested funding strategy included exploring other grant opportunities. We also spoke about the Historic Photo Archive project, and Suzanne introduced Lars Hodgen, the historic preservation intern, who's helping the city with cataloging historic photographs and posting them on the website. And we reviewed the first task that involves Lars creating a photo index spreadsheet with information on historic Monmouth photos. And then the commission then reviewed a number of historic photos shared on Google Drive, and we discussed places to find out more information about the photos. And that was really fun to find out more information. And Lars is scheduled to meet with Western Oregon University Archives and Polk County Historical Museum to research additional photos. And then, and Suzanne also noted that Mears will be hosting a 130th birthday party for the Howe House on Wednesday, August 25th from 6 to 8:30. The Historic Commission has been invited to host a historical display at the event, and George Jeffrey and Jim Mannion volunteered to staff the information table at that event. Our next meeting will not be until September 1st.
That's great. We certainly know Lars Haugen has some expertise at his disposal in the photography world, since his parents own Haugen's Portrait Gallery and longtime community members. So that's great to have someone on board to help with that project and all the other exciting projects. So thank you. Councilor.
I have a question for Councilor Salinas Oliveros. Councilor, did you share with the City Council the Independence History Timeline, the Monmouth Independence History Timeline? It's amazing. I received it from Kyle Jansen, who is the chairperson. I know his historian anyway. And I was really surprised at the history, I didn't know that there was a Chinese family who was burned out. They owned a laundry in downtown Monmouth, and it was burned out. So we have quite a history that it's really good for all of us to know. And I copied and put it into the chat, and I'd be happy to hit send if you would like.
And
That's great. It's actually on the city website, and I actually referred to it in the mayor's notes for this month.
I haven't seen my bill yet, so it's sorry, the newsletter.
It hasn't gone to print yet. It will. So,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll delete it then. I won't send it.
Oh, no, you're welcome to share. But
Okay.
the link is on the city website under the historic information. So under things to see and do.
And I just want to thank you so much for the work of your commission, whatever that is. So thank you so much for all that work.
Yeah, it's a very great group with a lot of information and expertise. So we are very fortunate.
Excellent. Other boards and commissions. Councilor Bells and then Councilor Over.
So the library board met July 14th, and we are missing 2 members, so we're short 2 people. It would be wonderful to have 2 individuals that would like to step up. We're meeting every other month now, so the next meeting will be September. Things are moving right along with some of the changes that are happening at the library in terms of furniture and heating and ventilation and replacing windows. Some of the things are held up, like the water filling station, because it's back ordered. So there are a number of things we're finding now because of COVID. Manufacturing slowed down a year ago, and so now trying to get products and things, they're harder to find. So we're waiting on that. The library is circulating the Wi-Fi hotspots and the launch pads. Furniture is going into the children's area. Curbside pickup, I believe, is still happening, but I think that will be being phased out as the library opens completely. And if you haven't been to the library, go. They've opened up the whole front area, and it's just very, very, very welcoming. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councilor Roberts.
Mine's so short. Parks and Rec was canceled again this month. Next meeting, second Wednesday in August, 6/11 at 6 p.m.
Are they out playing? Is that why?
Oh,
They're
they're
spending all the time in the parks.
That's right. Councilor Lopez.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a few brief reports tonight. The first was the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance has met since we met last. It was a shorter meeting than most. I think a number of communities at the time that we met were dealing with heat and the other issues that have faced our our region. So we had a lighter than usual attendance. A lot of that was focused on legislative updates and other matters that, you know, on a grand scheme, will impact the you know, future of how we deal with these issues in our communities. But you know, unfortunately, that meeting was kind of overwhelmed by just everyone trying to react to the current crises of the heat and how that impacts the homeless. I will thank, you know, I will thank Carol McKeel or Councillor McKeel for her mention of the cooling centers that have been deployed in our community here. Similar, you know, similar efforts have been, you know, made in the greater region, and clearly there's a lot of work to be done in, you know, in this arena. I hope that as we look at utilization of these funds moving forward, we really prioritize some of the ARPA funding to be able to better prepare for these, you know, these crises in the future, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's, you know, increasing climate stability that impacts not only the homeless, but us all. I'd also like to touch on the arts and culture. Oh, and I should note the next Homeless Alliance meeting is in early August, August 12th. And we are still holding these meetings virtually at 3 p.m. I'd also like to discuss the Arts and Culture Commission, and we had a special meeting of the Arts and Culture Commission last week, and that meeting included a lot of discussion around the debrief from the very successful event there at the park. We had an overwhelming turnout in the arts booth, to the point where we had to create more ballots for people to be able to vote on their favorite art. And that was the very first day we already ran out of ballots. So I want to give a big thanks to everyone that helped out with that event, and a big thanks to Phyllis for keeping, you know, the train on the rails there. And we're really excited to do more with the community here moving forward. We also discussed kind of the future trajectory of this commission, and talked a lot about future opportunities. I think the you know, the general consensus was that we'd like to be more involved in our community, more involved in more ways, more often. And so part of that entails doing and partnering in initiatives throughout the year. And I know that we do some of that now, but escalating that a little bit and finding creative ways to reach out to the community. So with that in mind, we're holding another meeting this Thursday, informally in my backyard outside. And where we don't have an agenda, but we will be discussing ideas on how we can, you know, as a commission, take a more active role. So if anyone would like to join, please let Phyllis know. My address is 533 Edwards Road South. But as I said, it's really an informal meeting just to try to brainstorm and see where we can take it for next steps. And the final report that I have is not an official board and commission here. It's dealing with the People of Color Caucus with the League of Oregon Cities. Madam Mayor, if you'd rather I save this for council comments, I'm happy to. I wasn't sure where this would fit best. So
go ahead. We're close to that, so go ahead.
Fantastic. So the People of Color Caucus is a newer caucus. It's been in the works for quite some time, and it's you know, focused on elected officials, and the organizing body with it is the League of Oregon Cities, and so focusing on local elected officials. You may have heard some things in the news recently about a similar caucus on the legislative level. This is different, though. This is, you know, that's really for state legislators. This is for those of us that are, you know, identifying as people of color on the local level. And This is brand new, as I said, brand new caucus. We've just completed our second official meeting. There have been a lot of pre-meetings, getting the bylaws in place and laying the groundwork, but just completed our second official meeting. And we are really here to serve people of color that are in local government. Build and increase capacity of city officials, including creating a supportive pipeline for people of color to engage in and serve in local government, and of course also serving as a resource to the League of Oregon Cities, and having a voice in how it formulates its policy agenda. This is just some of the ways that we hope to be influential in the future. And I'll also report that Councillor Ed Junkins of Corvallis was our president. Unfortunately, he has stepped down because he has taken a job with Notre Dame and is stepping down from the council and moving out of the area. With these changes in the basis of the commission, or of the caucus rather, they voted me as vice president, the new vice president. So it's a big charge. We still have a long way to go, but I appreciate your patience with me as I provided a lot of background on this newly formed caucus.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that information. Any other boards and commissions? Then we'll hear a report from Marty Wine and finish up with additional council comments. So
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a couple of notes to catch you up on some things that I was going to include in Friday notes and then just decided to hang on to for now. But first, we had some water main damage yesterday. Maybe some of you have heard about it. We're now affectionately calling it Geyser number 2 for 2021. Just before noon, we had a contractor who was removing asphalt with a driveway project over on North Knox Street and hit the city's water main. The water main is very shallow. It's a foot underground. And the theory is that that water main was installed in the 1960s before we had road development. So our public works crews responded right away. The water was shut down for the afternoon. They were able to restore service by 5:30 in the afternoon. Most of the impacted customers were apartment complexes and a few single family residences, and we tested the water and the samples came back clear today. So the boil water notice that we issued yesterday afternoon has been lifted. Longer term, the whole point of this is that you should look for on the CIP another water replacement project for our main. So if you see a new project on the next CIP, that's why. Last week in community and economic development, the city worked with Sparklet Designs and the Monmouth Business Association and Western Oregon University to put together a flyer for new student orientation the events that are coming up this summer. And it includes a map for eating and drinking establishments and links to the Quest scavenger hunt activity for students who are new students who are coming to town to learn about Monmouth. So we were happy to be included in that effort. Our CED staff has also met with Nikki Marazani, who's our chamber director, and she's looking at installing a reader board sign at the chamber location on 99W. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way to assist with our grant assistance program, or with urban renewal funds to assist with signs. So I just wanted you to know about that. And then the final note from CED from last week is that they received the much anticipated design review application for Taco Bell. I knew that would be popular, right? The Planning Commission is going to review that probably along with the City Hall project at their August meeting.
The student body at Western just swoons.
yeah, and Central High
And
School.
Central.
Yeah,
High.
We love being good news, I'm sure. So
Yeah, that's why we said as long as the trolley will stop at Taco Bell and back at the high school so kids can get back to class on time, we'll be in good shape.
I'll make a note of that too. Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks, Council.
All right, council comments.
So my family took a trip through the Intermountain West over the past week and
Counselor Obers.
rolled back into Monmouth on Saturday afternoon. And the clearest air we had on the whole trip was from the Sandy Ann Pass on down. And really nice to be home, nice to roll into our fair city. And, you know, amazing area, the Intermountain West, but the smoke is really bad. And we got a feel for those folks and for the folks in Southern Oregon right now who have what's probably going to become the largest fire in Oregon history reports done, which could be weeks or months before that thing is out. So, you know, think about those folks in Southern Oregon and know that the firefighters down there are in the fight of their life right now.
Counselor Belts.
I'll be absent from the next council meeting. I'll be traveling on company business. I will be in Orlando.
And Counselor McKeel.
Yeah, I would just like to take this opportunity to remind everyone about the roots of our area. Monmouth is located within the traditional homelands of the Lucky-Moot Band of Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalamuya people were forcibly removed to the reservations in western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are a part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And Counselor Carey. And unmute, John, so we can hear the waves, the ocean.
I got a little different system going than what I normally do. So two things. One, we approved a new person for one of our boards and commissions. Recall that we had a discussion about being a little more intentional on our budget committee and planning commission committee. And I think we agreed that we were going to go back and sort of have a work session and do some review on that. Not in a big hurry to do it, but I just don't want that to fall off our radar screen. Now, in the community that I'm in, I read the local newspaper every day, and their local governing group is proposing a series of videos that they'll put on like their YouTube channel that talk about county and city government. And I thought, gee, that speaks to a lot of the outreach things that we've been talking about. The transparency that we like to talk about, outreach to a variety of different, populations, things like, how do you testify? How do you make public comment? How do you lodge complaints? How do ordinances get passed? Sort of the nuts and bolts things that, and you say, well, I'd like to know what's on the agenda. Well, it's on the city website, but people don't necessarily recognize that. And we've got a lot of those kind of resources with the university, with WIMPEG, with the just a lot of talent. We could create some informational, educational things that could reach a variety of different things, or at least would be available. So I'm going to flesh those out a little more when I get back, and I'll be able to talk a little more in detail about that. But I think it's a good idea, and I'd like us to sort of keep it in mind. So thank you.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to get. Certainly we have, as you say, at the university, we've got a lot of folks in their public administration group that could help with that, and WIMPEG studio right there on campus. I bet it would be a neat, and maybe the communications department, a neat collaboration. So we've got some contacts in those areas. So it would be really interesting.
It's a rebirth of Fraggle Rock.
And yeah, right. That's right. Fraggle Rock. Okay. Any other comments? Then a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And all in favor, please signify by saying